10 p.m. in Accra and in Edinburgh, Scotland, 11 p.m. in Lagos, Nigeria, midnight in South Africa. Wherever you are around the world, this is News at 10 on TV3 and 3FM 92.7. You can hear us on the TuneIn app as well. We're coming to you live from our news hub at Adisawe, Kanda in Accra. Let's start with the summary of the day's major news highlights. President Akufo-Addo has tasked Togolese parties in the Togolese political crisis to put the interests of their nation first and ensuring a lasting solution to the impasse. The Ghanaian president is in Togo to mediate the political unrest between the Togolese president Faure Gnassingbé and the opposition coalition in that country. And police in Asherman have in their custody a middle-aged man who hit the head of his niece with an iron rod for defecating in her dress. The 6-year-old girl suffered severe head injuries, but the Domestic and Violence Victim Support Unit, DOVSU, says it is relying on the benevolence of the public to enable her receive medical treatment. And also, the Criminals Division of the Accra High Court has ordered the release of the Achimota Senior High School student who shot and killed his girlfriend last year and was sentenced to 3 years in a correctional home. The court held that the trial exceeded the 6 months as stipulated in the Juvenile Act, while the trial judge erred in ordering a social inquiry report after handing sentence despite required by law to do that before. An embattled director of the Ankafo Psychiatric Hospital, Dr. Eugene Dubois, has been given 1 week to hand over to his would-be successor. The aggrieved nurses have accepted a new roadmap negotiated by the Deputy Minister of Health, Tina Mensah. This will bring to an end almost a year-long battle between the nurses and the director, whose tenure has been described as abusive. And on the international front, at least 17 people, including children, have been killed in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, and many more injured after a huge mound of rubbish collapsed. Officials say the pile of waste, some 50 meters high, that's approximately 49 feet, caved in during heavy rains around 3 a.m. local time on Monday. The dump is known to be home to some of the city's poorest residents who build makeshift camps amid the rubbish. Those were our major news highlights. Remember, we're live on your radio, 3FM 92.7, and you can follow our live stream on Facebook as well as Trainees.com. Up next is a big one. In our top story tonight, the 2016 batch of government-trained nurses have besieged the Ministry of Health demanding postings to various health centers across the country. The nurses say they do not understand why privately trained nurses are going through verification exercise for employment while they have not been considered for such.
These aggrieved nurses form part of the 9,905 government-trained nurses of the 2016 batch. Though not bonded, these trainee nurses are expecting postings from government, even though they could search for jobs. They claim to have been home for the past 15 months after completing school.
It's very pathetic. We the government nurses, up to now, the exorbitant fees that we paid in schools, and up to now, the food, everything that we had to the bustle and hustle that we need to pass through the institutions till now. And as to now, you still not posted us, and you tell us, comparing us to your private nurses, telling us we are the same. I want to ask a question. If you as a father, you have not paid that of your son's school fees, how do you go and pay that of people's sons for them?
They are a combination of preventive and nurse assistant for the clinical unit. The trainee nurses who completed their studies in 2016 said several meetings with the health minister with the view to address their concerns have been to no avail. They intend pitching camp at the ministries and will not leave until their concerns are addressed.
I've stayed in the house for 2 years. We're getting to 2 years. 2 good years, no postings. If you manage to buy food, it's a problem. Always have to ask your mother. You have to ask your father. It's affecting our social status. As a nurse, you go to a professional school, complete, pass your exams, and then you are still in the house for this long time. In fact, it's affecting the whole society, the whole nation, not only us as a person.
Their protest distracted the rather peaceful verification privately trained nurses, which was underway at the same premises.
Some of us, we've been in the house for about 5 good years or 6 years or 3 years. But now that we had the opportunity that the forms are in for private nurses only. So we just have to fill them and submit, and the forms are not for sale.
The privately trained nurses comprise the 2012 to 2016 batches. TV3, Kwabna Edu Jenfi.
Now, the Ghana Police Service has asked the picketing nurses at the Ministry of Health to vacate the area. They were originally going to spend the night there to continue their picketing tomorrow, but they have now actually moved to the forecourt of TV3 premises as they claim they have nowhere to go. Very unfortunate situation. We'll be showing you images from they are the forecourt of TV3. Very sad situation, but let's quickly come to studio here, and we have in the studio the national president of the Ghana Nurse Midwife Trainees Association, Semiola Batia Santi. I hope I got your name right. Good evening, sir. Thank you. So why are you here now at TV3 premises? You could have gone home.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given. I think we are here as a result of the action being put in place by the police service.
The police service is driving you away from the
police service decided to drive our members away this night by the use of shockers and other weapons that I cannot.
So you're not happy that you were forcibly removed from the premise. But what influenced your decision to sleep over the health minister? Especially you knew that it was illegal to picket at the premise, especially after official closing hours. Although you legitimately have a right to picket, it's wrong to picket at out of office hours in a government building.
Thank you very much. I think we're still there hoping for the Minister of Health to come and respond to us, because since morning we have been at the Ministry of Health. The minister and all his workers over there never paid attention to us to even come and respond to my members that indeed on this day we are going to employ you so you can go home. And as I went there in the morning and I was being called upon by the Deputy Chief Director of Ministry of Health, I clearly stated to him that if he is able to come down and talk to my people, then they are okay with whatever he says.
It looks like you're holding government to ransom. Did you expect to be employed immediately because you were picketing? That's a bit of a harsh way of negotiating. Or you think that you're not being treated fairly already?
We are not being treated fairly.
Why?
That is why we are there.
Why?
Why I'm saying we are not being treated fairly is that they have given us promises. And the promise goes with a timeline or a time bound. And we have actually gotten to the
what promises were these?
We're being promised by the President and the Minister of Health that this group of nurses will be employed by February, March 2018. Because as at the time we met with the President on 27th of September 2017, the Minister stated right in front of the President that they had exhausted the 2017 budget And for that matter, this group of nurses will be considered in the 2018 budget.
You can see there in your shot images of the nurses who are picketing at the forecourt of TV3 premises. They're a very sad situation there. They've been kicked out from the Ministry of Health by the police, and we're hearing from their representative that the police used excessive force, including stun guns and things, to drive them away from the place. Now they're picketing here. I'm not sure you're going to spend the night at our premises. Are you going to do that?
We are going to stay here, then early in the morning we get up and move to the ministry.
But why do you have to do that? You could go home. Why are you not going home?
As it stands now, people have traveled all the way from other parts of the country. That is the three northern regions, eastern region, Volta region. Let me just say, people have moved from all the 10 regions of Ghana to come down here to actually demand for what rightly belongs to us.
And you did not anticipate that you would have to find a place to sleep? I mean, I'm thinking that you're holding everyone to ransom, including us here, who are conducting our private business, and you are more like marooning yourself on us, and you don't want us to breathe.
You see, as it stands, we made our mind that we are going to stay at the Ministry of Health.
Okay.
And we were there with our weapons. We just went there with our bare hands to demand for what rightly belongs to us. And I was very sure that my members would have returned back to their various homes if the minister had even respected us or felt have it in his heart that these are human beings that have been here since morning. It's all about
feeling disrespected.
Yes, we have not been given any needed respect or recognition by the Minister of Health and his staff since morning. And what pissed me so much is that the minister
I'll be very grateful if you could refine your language. So you say what got you angered.
Yes.
If you say pissed off, you're being a bit excessive.
Okay, what made me to actually feel bad is that the Minister of Health was able to leave the premises of the ministry as at 7:30 thereabout, and without even talking to us.
You didn't get any feedback at all?
We didn't get any feedback from him. Meanwhile, he came in and saw us there and left again without saying anything to us.
So what are you going to do from now?
We are going to stay, and tomorrow morning we'll be at the ministry again.
Continue your picketing, right?
We'll be there until they are able to actually give us a response. But what the minister has actually done is very bad. We are all human beings and citizens that are ready to serve this country. So with what they are doing, it goes a long way to tell our junior colleagues currently undergoing training that government has not got any positive plans for them. And this also goes a long way to tell the general public that the response from the PRO and the minister that they are working on our issue is not true, because if they were actually working on getting us employed, nothing would have prevented them from coming to address us since morning.
I'm telling you that, right.
This actually, is the level
we'll be trying to get onto the telephone lines to speak with the public relations officer of the ministry, Robert Kujo. He'll be joining us pretty shortly. But Mr. Semiula Batia Santi, we're grateful for your time. You've told us that you're going to stay here until tomorrow. So if after tomorrow you don't get any feedback, what happens?
We'll continue to stay.
You continue picketing.
We'll continue
for
to
how
stay.
many days are your members going to sleep outside in the open?
We are going to stay here
for as long as you get
as long as we are going to be given a positive feedback that this is when exactly we are going to employ 2016 year batch of diploma and certificate nurses. Right. Quite apart from that, we are not relenting our efforts in what we're doing. Right.
Mr. Santi, we're grateful for your time. Samiola Batia Santi is the president of the Nurses, Midwife, Trainees Association of Ghana. I'm Stephen Ntia. We're trying to get onto the telephone lines to speak with the public relations officer of the Ministry of Health, Robert Kujo, but we couldn't raise him on. This is where we have to bring down the curtain for the big one. Well, let's move on now. President Akufo-Addo, I beg your pardon, has charged parties in the Togolese political crisis to put the interests of the nation at heart and make the spirit of compromise a key factor in ensuring a lasting solution to the impasse there. President Akufo-Addo was in Togo to mediate the ongoing political unrest between President Faure Gnassingbé and the opposition coalition in that country.
The dialogue was part of a 6-month-long effort attending a series of protests which have claimed several lives. The meeting of key political protagonists in the ongoing unrest is expected to chart a credible path for the political future of the French West African colony. At the opening session of the dialogue, President Akufo-Addo charged the political leadership of the country to put the interest of the nation first.
It's important that is this forum, and then it is this dialogue that will determine the future of this country. And it is important that it is the Togolese themselves, and not any outside forces, that will determine the future of your country. It's extremely important for all of us to recognize that the destinies of our nations are in our own hands, and that therefore whatever emerges out of this dialogue represents the solutions that the Togolese people are looking for. What therefore is required of us on this occasion? It is that for all those who are assembled here, recognize that in a dialogue, the spirit of accommodation, the spirit of compromise has to be at the very forefront of the preoccupations of everyone. Why? Because the national interest of Togo demands it. And that has to be the overriding concern of everybody who will be participants in this dialogue, the national interest of the people of Togo.
The President Facilitation Team included the Minister for National Security, Albert Kandapa, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Charles Oredu, Ghana's Ambassador to Togo, Kwesi Owusu-Yaboah, Ambassador at Large, Dr. Edward Mahama, former Secretary to President Kufuor, and experienced retired diplomat DK Osei.
It's important for the self-respect of the Togolese people that their leaders are seen to be capable of arriving at solutions that will advance the interests of the people of this country. And my job, and the job of the facilitation team that has come from my country, is to assist in that process, to help in that process. I don't have a position in this matter. Despite all the links between us, I am not a Togolese, and therefore I cannot have a position in this matter. I can only assist in bringing about, hopefully, a durable solution to the problems of your country.
It will be the first formal dialogue between the members of the 14 opposition parties and the incumbent president.
Right, let's get on to the telephone lines. We have Bernard Mona, is a convener of the Ghana-Togo Solidarity Movement, joining us on the telephone lines now. Mr. Mona, we're grateful for your time. President Akufo-Addo held talks today and is urging the government and opposition leaders in Togo to be guided always by the interests of their country and that of the people. I want to ask you whether you feel that this is a good step forward.
Thanks, Steve Auntie. I think that first and foremost, I commend the President and his team for taking up the initiative and also supported by ECOWAS to find an amicable solution to the crisis in Togo. It should be obvious to you that President Buhari, for I think 2 weeks ago, had made very strong statements against the Togolese government and has urged them to get ready for a transition as for Nyasimbe and the regime in place is not fit for purpose within the SAP region, given that they are the only country without a term limit to their presidency, and the fact that they have imprisoned so many people unduly. I think that if you listen to today's discourse, it's obvious that cardinal among the reliefs that the opposition are seeking is the unconditional release of so-called political prisoners, and also the lifting of bans in cities like Sokode, Bafilo, and Mango, where the areas have been besieged by security and military presence to prevent them from going on public manifestation. My shock of all this is that the president of Togo himself did not avail for the opportunity by the president of Ghana to be part of the opening ceremony of this dialogue. Also note that for the past 3 days or so, Kandapa and the other team members were in Togo to prepare the grounds for the president's arrival today and the opening ceremony. So somehow I feel that President Paul has not respected the president of Ghana and also the mandate given by the president of Ghana by ECOWAS. Whichever way it is, I think that it's a good step, and we are hopeful. As at this evening, I think that the president was expected back home, but one of the things, or two of the things that were on the table, was the unconditional release of political prisoners, and also for the lifting of bans in the besieged towns of Sokode, Buffalo, and Mango. And because the president was not in the conference, there could not have been immediate action on it. And I'm told that President of Ghana had then, after the conference, had to go and have meetings with Foreign Assembly to see how action can be taken on these other steps before the processes can continue. Because the opposition said that we can't continue to have talks when you have imprisoned our people.
I know that your solidarity movement, the Ghana-Togo solidarity movement, at your last news conference called on the president of Togo to step down. But I reckon that you recognize he has a mandate to complete.
Well, I don't know how you describe a mandate. When he himself has appreciated the fact that, look, there is a constitutional limitation which his father violated, and that his father has stayed in office for 38 years. He came, instead of running the 2 terms which actually expired in 2015, he changed the name of the political party to give the semblance that it is the political party that is given a 2-term limit and not the individual that is the president. And therefore, from RCP to UNIF, whichever it is recognized that, look, he overstayed his period. He is in the 3rd year of an illegitimate period. And that is why, for the first time in 51 years, the opposition in Togo have come together and formed what they call the Coalition of Opposition Political Parties, 14 of them, now putting in place measures that will ensure that, look, it is time for him to go.
Right.
I think that in all honesty and in all fairness, what we did at ECOWAS in Liberia, what we did
Right, Mr. Mona, I think we're losing your line, but in any case, we're grateful for your time, though. Thank you very much. Bernard Mona is a convener of the Ghana-Togo movement. I'm Stephen Enti. This is still News at 10, and you can hear us live on 3FM 92.7 as well. We have more news for you. Welcome back. The Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has called on members of the diaspora to invest in developing human capital to foster growth and development on the African continent. Dr. Bawumia believes developing human capital will reduce over-reliance on foreign donors and their support for the continent. He was speaking at the 150th anniversary celebration and wreath-laying ceremony for the late Dr. William Edward Bogart Dubois in Accra.
Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia recalled the immeasurable role of the late civil rights activist Dr. William Dubois to Africa's liberation. He emphasized on his sound ideals and doctrines to sowing the seeds of Africa's emancipation during his time and era. Dr. Bawumia was elated at the fact that the late historian and sociologist mentored the late Dr. Kwame Nkrumah prior to launching and during Ghana's independence struggle. He pledged government's strong commitment to emulating his ideals to move Ghana beyond aid.
We have to think ahead. We don't just want people, we want quality human capital. And this is why our education systems have to be ramped up. And we have to link with the human capital that we already have in the diaspora.
He again called on those in the diaspora to invest in human capital to make the African continent a success.
The research is very clear that the single most important factor is not natural resources, the gold, oil, and all that, but the single most important factor for the development and the progress of nations is your human capital.
Minister of Tourism and Creative Arts, Katrina Feku, urged others in the diaspora to return home and assist in national development.
I'm sending this message through the Black Caucus that is here. This should not be an issue. This should not be a problem. We tell our young ones growing up, see the continent, touch the continent, demystify the stories that you see on television on the other side. Come home.
The daughter of the late Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Samia Yaba Nkrumah, called for the strengthening of African unity.
Africans in the US, in Australia, in Latin America, in Europe, all over the world. Africa is one and indivisible, and Africans are one.
The great-grandson of the late W.E.B. Dubois called for unity among African Americans.
That's what I would give you from him. Locking arms with the people who can take you forward. Locking arms with your friends, with the people who you know have meaning in your life.
Other speakers at the anniversary celebration praised government for setting up a diaspora desk at the presidency. Later, the vice president laid a wreath on behalf of government, and the American ambassador Robert Jackson laid one on behalf of the U.S. government. A great-grandson of W.B. Du Bois, Arthur McFarlane, also laid a wreath on behalf of the Du Bois family. The Minister of Tourism, Katrina Feku, also laid a wreath on behalf of government.
And that's it for News at 10. Thank you extremely for making time. On behalf of the crew here, good night. There is more news at 3news.com.